Hey folks, Alex here from Any Given Saturday, and today I'm joined by Brett Gibbons, the man behind the ROAD to College Football. Brett is on a quest to visit all 130 FBS football stadiums in America, and he's been doing a great job of documenting his travels on the ROAD to College Football website and Instagram page, both of which I'll link below this video. Brett's a former recruiter for Bowling Green State University and Texas State University, and he recently finished an 8-day summer road trip where he covered over 6,600 miles and 27 stadiums in 16 states. As of right now, Brett has visited 98 FBS stadiums. He's also an alumni of Bowling Green State University. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm really looking forward to talking about all this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. So I guess the best place to start would be, what was the inspiration behind the Road to College Football and sort of beginning this journey? I noticed on your website that that you mentioned September 2015 as being an important time that sort of maybe started the inspiration behind this. So if you could maybe get into detail a bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So the September 26th, I remember because it's actually my mom's birthday. Back in 2015, I decided to get on a bus to go to a road game. I was a freshman at Bowling Green, and we were playing at Purdue. And like a $10 ticket, they'll bus you there, they'll bus you back, feed you, all that stuff. And I'm like, I can't pass this up. So I asked a couple of my friends around. No one wanted to go. So I was like, all right, I'm in this by myself. That's fine. That's cool. So got on the bus. We trekked. It's about a 4-hour drive west from where I went to school. And the game day was just so great. It was intoxicating, I think is the best way to put it. And it wasn't necessarily due to what happened on the field. And we won that day. We actually upset Purdue with 9 seconds left. Our running back, Trent Green, ran in a touchdown, and it was fun. We went wild. There's about 40 of us, and the rest of the 45,000 seat stadium was silent. But I remember more about the senses that day, what I saw, what I heard, what I smelled, what I felt. And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, so I had Ohio State, and I was a huge fan, but we never went to any of the games because it was about 2 hours away, very expensive if you've ever looked at Ohio State tickets, my goodness. So we never went. So this was my first, quote-unquote, big-time college football experience, and I'm just like, how do I replicate this as quickly as possible? So I began doing, looking at some of the stadiums that were in the immediate area. And it actually took a couple of years for me to get actually on track because I was busy with school and had absolutely no money to my name as a college freshman, as we can relate there, I'm sure.
Yep.
But it just became more about the venues and the colors and the layouts and the little details here and there, more so than, buying a ticket to a game and sitting down and watching the highlights. There's a lot of people that follow the account that are like, you should post highlights more. You should post game recaps. And I'm like, go look on ESPN. That's what they're for. I'm here to tell you what it's like to be a fan in the stands at these stadiums and in the college towns. Sure.
Well, I guess what was Purdue's stadium like then?
So Ross-Ade Stadium, in retrospect, is fine. No slight to them at all. It really is a great stadium and always holds a kind of nostalgic place in my heart because it was just the first one. But it's an open horseshoe. Not a whole lot of those open horseshoe concepts anymore. They were doing work on one of the end zones last summer. Right. When I visited most recently, but it has this massive press box, and even today, I look at that press box and I'm like, wow, that is a big, like the ratio of press box to stands it's skewed in the press box there in Purdue. And then until they started doing the renovation in that end zone, the end zone was filled with trees, and the aesthetic to Purdue's campus is like a dark brick, just something. I can't really describe it. It's just kind of like a dark brick on all the buildings. Matches. It looks great. It actually even matches like their stadium. and I sat in the opposite end zone. So only the one end zone. I was able to see out and see the campus and the city. And it for some reason it smelled like pine trees. I don't believe that there was actually pine trees around, but it smelled like pine trees, and it was a really soothing kind of feel. And we could have lost 55-0, and I still would have had a great game day experience.
Yeah.
And that's after sitting on a bus for 8 hours next to people I don't know. And I believe I left my earbuds for my iPhone at home. So I kind of just dealt with it. But it was a great place, a great experience. I've since visited again. And it's a stadium that people don't really think of because Purdue kind of gets swept under the rug in the Big Ten West.
Sure.
But it really is a nice place.
Sure. Yeah. And that bus journey back must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. People were really excited. This was before I had a high tolerance for driving really, really, really long distances. But so that was kind of miserable. But yeah, it was exciting. Our university president was actually on the bus with us, and she was up in her seat and getting us all excited. And she was this little old lady from Tennessee and had the thickest Tennessean accent. She was such a sweetheart. But it was a lot of fun on the way back.
Sure. Oh, brilliant. What have you learned sort of from this whole journey and experience that you've had so far with this? I mean, I know that's a really big question. But, is there sort of like an overall theme of kind of, as I say, what's what are kind of the things that come to mind when you sort of stand back and think, oh my God, I've visited 98 stadiums already. Is there sort of I don't know, like not so much a message of this whole journey, but like what's the overall thoughts and emotions on doing something like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's that your expectations, throw them away. Whenever you go to any of these places, if someone listening wants to do a similar journey, whether it be with college football or any sport, it's that keep your expectations in your back pocket because they're almost always going to be wrong. I've never, even after watching, college football for years and years and years on TV and seeing all of these on College Game Day and all this stuff, until you're actually there, every single time I come here to a new place, I'm like, this is a little bit different than I thought, or a lot of bit different than I thought. And another big thing that I learned, maybe not necessarily a message, is that these college towns are so far removed from everything. Interstates, major cities. There are some of these places that are just impossible to get to. A good example is Lubbock, Texas, with Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Closest major city is, I'm looking at my map, Amarillo. But that's not really a big city. Maybe Albuquerque, New Mexico, but that's about 4 hours away, which is the same distance that the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is. So that's, and there's no interstates that go there. You're taking 2-lane country highways, and it's just, some of these college towns are so far removed, but that's what makes them great. Is they're not absorbed into the surrounding city's culture, that they have their own thing. And that's one of the most exciting things about ROAD to CFB. Yeah. As far as an overarching message, it's just, get out and see these places, and don't take your expectations with you. Because again, I grew up an Ohio State fan, die hard. That means I hate everything maize and blue. I hate Michigan. I hate the Wolverines, hate their fight song. I'll be honest with you, when I've been to the Michigan Stadium and their game days that don't involve Ohio State, Michigan fandom is infectious. They're really nice people. Their song is kind of catchy, even it makes me a little sick. And just their overall game day is amazing. So I just don't knock it till you try it, for lack of a better term. But yeah, just, get out and see these places, even if it's your most bitter rival.
Yeah. Okay. No, fantastic. Right, so you've just finished your summer road trip. Were you happy with how the whole trip went? As someone who was tracking your progress on Instagram all the time, the trip looked incredible.
It was. I can sum it up into a really succinct thing here. Did I have fun? Absolutely. It was great. Would I ever do it again? Absolutely not. No. There's way too much driving. But no, it was it was so much fun. It was really rewarding. I was in the car by myself for, 96, 98 hours.
Wow.
By the end of the trip, I was just so burnt out, but nothing went wrong. I got no tickets. I had no flat tires, didn't run out of gas, didn't have to. I was always an hour or so ahead of schedule. Didn't hit traffic, specifically in like Los Angeles, which is like so notorious for its horrible traffic. Avoided all that.
Yeah.
And I got to see all the stadiums I wanted to see. It was, like you said, 27 in total, and then a couple of Division I AA schools. But yeah, it was amazing seeing. I mean, for any listeners that aren't from the U.S. or might not be totally familiar, this is a huge place. So I took 8 days and drove 800 miles a day, 12 to 15 hour shifts. And I covered 1/3 of the country. Like that's it. But it was super rewarding. I had a lot of fun. It was many months in the making. And the fact that it went off without a hitch was just more than I could have ever dreamed of.
Yeah. Obviously, with COVID going on at the moment, were there any ways that you had to change the trip, or was it a case that you'd already planned? I guess you'd already planned the trip with COVID still going on anyway. So,
we've actually been pretty fortunate to where COVID is by no means in the rearview mirror. But most of all the state mask mandates are lifted here.
Sure.
And life is slowly getting back to normal, which is great. Last year when I did my first summer road trip, it was right in the middle of the pandemic when things were at the absolute worst, at least here in the United States. And it was last August. Things didn't get a whole lot worse than that. And, you mask up because it's a solo road trip. There's not really a whole lot of sacrifices or changes I had to make because I was going by myself. I was staying away from people. Just out of respect for the universities, I did look up all their mask policies beforehand and wore a mask when I needed to, and didn't wear a mask when I didn't need to because I was just by myself. So fortunately, COVID didn't do a whole lot of changing the way I do things. Although last year, it was something I really did have to take into heavy consideration.
Yeah. Okay. There seemed to be somewhat of a focus on scenic stadiums on this recent trip. Which ones kind of really stood out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. BYU, no doubt.
Yeah.
Brigham Young in northern Utah. They have, their stadium is like backed right up on the mountains, on the Rocky Mountains. So their view out the away side is pretty spectacular. The scale of the mountains is just like, holy cow! Like pictures don't do it justice. Colorado, of course, was beautiful because it's the same story. It's backed up right on these mountains in the Rocky Mountains. And they have a section of the Rocky Mountains called the Flatirons in Boulder, Colorado, where the mountain is literally, it was sheared off in such a way that it's just totally flat. And it's really pretty. And that's kind of what they're famous for. So Colorado would have, unfortunately, I didn't really get the full grasp of that view because I didn't get in the stadium. That one was locked down. So trying to think of other ones that might have been kind of surprising. Cal was quite surprising because out the backside of California Memorial Stadium, you can see the full San Francisco skyline and the Golden Gate Bridge, albeit far in the distance, but it's just kind of a cool, you see the Bay Area, you see Berkeley, it's on a hill. And yeah, I would say those are probably the most scenic ones. It just got to the point where like all these stadiums out west have mountains in the background. So all of them are pretty cool and breathtaking in their own right as far as backdrops go.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. No, just thinking about it. And I mean, I see a lot of these stadiums normally because I'm constantly watching like the ESPN player when the season's going on. And, they look incredible just on television. I can't even imagine how amazing they must look like in person. It's pretty amazing. What was your thoughts on visiting Stanford Stadium and the Bulldog Stadium? Now I know that's really two random universities. It might seem like I've picked out, but I actually visited both when I did a California road trip back in the summer of 2019.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So I didn't actually get to see Fresno State play, but I checked out a bit of the campus and the Bulldog Stadium when I was driving through because I stayed in Fresno for a couple of nights. And then I got to see Stanford play, actually. Quite fortunate about that. I got to see them play Northwestern as well, which was quite cool. So yeah, what was your thoughts on those two stadiums?
So I didn't realize that Stanford Stadium was built so recently.
Right.
just kind of, again, like these preconceived notions. I always assumed that Stanford had this old stadium that might have been fixed up, but no, this facility is like brand new, like 2005, 2006. That one was really, it was interesting. It actually reminded me more of a soccer stadium than it did a college football stadium.
Okay.
Just the way that it was built out, just the shape of it. I'm not sure. It looks a bit smaller, I think, but it holds more than it looks because it's just this kind of even, for those who don't know, it's, most stadiums have like their big grandstands and then little end zone stands or something along those lines. But no, Stanford's is just like this even double tiered kind of octagonal shape around the field. And I mean, Stanford is a very wealthy university that costs a lot of money to go there, and the money shows. It definitely does. They have those columns at the end. I think they modeled it after the LA Memorial Coliseum a little bit. You can see kind of some influence in there, which I think is great. And then the fact that it's just hidden by trees around the top is pretty cool. So Stanford was one I didn't expect to be able to see the inside of, but I was able to. I was fortunate enough. So that was kind of the forefront of my thought when I walked in. I was like, holy cow, didn't think I'd be in here. This is really nice. It's everything you'd expect from, university of that social or economical tier. And Fresno State's, that one is really interesting. It's got this super unique, the light fixtures almost look like cranes over the field, which is really cool. I don't see that a whole lot. And then it's just interesting. Just the little details about it, the kind of concrete-esque feel that really matches the city of Fresno. At least on the day that I was there, it was like 100 degrees. So it felt very appropriate, but it's just it's an interesting stadium that is definitely a little older. I think that one might have been built in like the 50s or 60s. And hasn't had a whole ton of updates since. But that one has really good seating. I stood in like the very, very, very upper topper deck. And it was still like you're right on top of the action.
No, that's interesting. On your visit to UTEP, you stumbled into a graduation ceremony. So talk me through how that went down.
Okay, so I was staying in Las Cruces, New Mexico. That was where my hotel was at night, and it's about 45 minutes away from El Paso, and that's not that far. That's fine, but far enough to where I couldn't just be like, you know what, I'll come back in the morning. So I drove about, I think that was about a 14-hour drive from Tucson, Arizona to El Paso, Texas, maybe a little bit less. But I finally got there, pulled in, or I'm sorry, the whole day was 14 hours. I started my day in Pasadena. It is absolutely not 14 hours from Tucson to El Paso. It's about 6. But so I pulled in and there's all these cars there. And I'm like, all right, where am I supposed to park? This is fine, whatever. So I kept going, and all of a sudden I see people walking out with flowers and in robes. And I'm like, oh God. And I looked up on the scoreboard that you can see from the street, and it's like, congrats, grads. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I live in Fort Worth, Texas, and El Paso is also in Texas, except for the fact that it's 10 hours away from where I live because Texas is just so massive. So I can't just go back there, next weekend and go see it. It would take a lot of commitment. So I was already out there. I'd come all this way. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to deal with it. So I walked in and there is event staff there, and the Sun Bowl Stadium, it's usually open to the public. So I was anticipating being able to get in anyway. And I walked up and there was an event staff lady, and she's like, have you been here before? Can I see your like re-entry ticket? And I was like, I haven't been here before yet. She's like, you're just now coming? They're done. And so I had to explain to her. I was like, look, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm traveling around the country. I'm super far away from home. I came here just to see the stadium. Do you mind if I go snap a couple pictures? And she was so kind and let me go do it. But it was kind of awkward to walk in the bowl, be the only one standing. Everyone else is sitting watching their, son, daughter, niece, nephew, family member, friend cross the stage. And so I kind of went over to one of the sides where I wasn't going to be a nuisance, and just took my standard panning video as they're calling names and people walking across and taking pictures, and they're all sat down there. But I was surprised because who college graduation season's over. I thought,
Yeah.
but it's just circumstance, and you just kind of have to deal with what you're given.
Yeah. No, of course. And UTEP always seems to have a beautiful backdrop as well.
Yeah, that's one I forgot to mention. Because their backdrop is absolutely noteworthy. The mountains that you see
Yeah.
in, I guess, what would be the southern or southeastern end zone is actually Mexico. So it's a different country than the U.S. And when you drive in from the west, the highway, Interstate 10, gets really close to the Mexican border. Like you can see the border, you can see the wall, you can see Mexico on the other side, and it's a bit of a sobering moment because right there on the border is not the most affluent area of Mexico. It's people who don't have front doors. It's people that don't have windows. And these houses, they're brightly colored. It's super cool. Just kind of a peek into their culture. But you see that side of Mexico, which is they're not well to do. They are very poor right there. And then you look across the highway in the United States and you see UTEP's campus, which is gorgeous. And, for a moment while I was driving there, I'm like, no wonder there, so many people are trying to get here. Like imagine waking up every morning and seeing that and knowing what you have, no air conditioning, who knows what kind of situation you're in.
Yes.
And you look just across that border and you're like, man, I could throw a baseball into there. Yeah. And that's, I think, why so many people want to get a better life. And I'm sorry to go on a sobering tangent, but it absolutely is a part of visiting Sun Bowl Stadium, is you see that.
Yeah. No, that's, as you say, that must be very sobering and, quite something to experience. A big thing for you is driving instead of flying, right, to games and stadiums. So in that respect then, sort of a large chunk of the time that you've spent on this project has presumably been, sort of been just as much on, it's sort of been just as much of an American road trip as it has actually been a case of seeing stadiums, right, and campuses. How interesting have you actually found, the travel to be? And have you had opportunities to sort of take in sort of the Americana of the road trip and sort of other aspects of the trip, or has it sort of been more of a case at times of just sort of going from one stadium to another and sort of that way?
Yeah, so the name Road to CFB wasn't an accident. It's because when I started this, I couldn't really afford a plane ticket and to rent a car. That's expensive. So I'm like, you know what? I got a car though. I can do this myself. So I do choose to drive everywhere. And I think it just started out of necessity, but now it's to the point where it's just kind of the thing. Yeah. And part of that is because I do love taking the drive. Now, I'm not pulling over every 5 minutes and standing around and going, wow, this is pretty neat. Although on my summer road trip, I did pull over and hiked in Yellowstone National Park. I did stop at like Lake Tahoe and kind of these landmark scenic places. But yeah, you can take in a lot of the scenery and you have plenty of time too, especially when you're driving by yourself. Yeah. But, after 30, 40 hours of driving, or even after 3 or 4 hours of driving in the same landscape, it gets old. No matter how breathtaking and scenic it is, you really are just kind of like, oh, okay, I've seen this. It's great. So I do really, really enjoy it. And there are times where I seriously just kind of am taking out of the moment and being like, wow. Yeah. Western Montana is a good example of that. Arizona is a pretty good example of that. Like those kind of places, when you first see things and you're like, holy cow, this is Central Washington actually is surprisingly amazing. But for every mountain that you cross and you see the big sprawl below you, you also have 6-7 hours driving up Interstate 35 through Kansas and Oklahoma and Nebraska, where it's just cornfields, which is fine because I went to school out in Western Ohio, which is cornfields, so I'm very used to it. But to answer your question about whether I just get there or whether I really enjoy the drive, I do enjoy the drive. But there are examples where I'm just kind of like, okay, I've seen this. I've been on the road for many, many hours. Let's get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've got to keep on schedule as well, haven't you? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's surprisingly, we kept well ahead of schedule. Everything went really well. When you drive 7 hours and you just go just 5 miles over the speed limit, nothing crazy, that's 35 minutes you shave off your drive.
Yeah. Wow. So I guess in that respect, then, have you found that you've enjoyed the travel more than maybe you initially thought you would, or
Um, that-
is it sort of
that's an
I
interesting
guess it
question.
depends where you kind of where you're traveling, I guess, doesn't it?
Kind of, yeah. I've always had this weird affinity for road trips when I was a kid.
Right.
I love road trip movies. I loved going on road trips. Just the thought of getting in the car and driving somewhere you've never been before and driving so far, all those kind of things is just kind of something I've just always really, really enjoyed. So I have found myself, you know, sometimes I do have to remind myself that I'm in the middle of this drive and I can go anywhere. And in this past case in the summer, everywhere.
Yeah.
And I have found that I do enjoy it. Get to listen to a lot of podcasts, get to listen to a lot of new music, and have a lot of time, for myself. So I have enjoyed it. And there are times where I have gone with other people. And boy, that's a little bit more tolerable when you have someone to talk to.
Yeah, I bet.
But I don't know of anybody that would have wanted to get in the car and do what I did this past summer. So, but I have enjoyed, as much as I thought. There have been times where I've enjoyed it much more too. I don't think there's ever been times where I've straight up been miserable driving
Yeah.
or been like, man, I really wish I didn't have to do this. Not at all, because you wake up and you're like, today I get to go do my favorite thing in the whole world, and that's go to new places and see new stadiums and new campuses and new cultures and new people.
Yeah. Yeah. Has it at all maybe inspired you to sort of do separate road trips around America, sort of further down the line, maybe that don't have anything necessarily to do with college football?
Sure, yeah, and I've done plenty of those actually, even before and
Right.
throughout. My fiance and I, we took a road trip to Colorado to go see some friends, and we got a cabin way up in the mountains just to hang out. So I do other road trips, and the fact that I have a very high tolerance for driving really far distances. So I end up being the driver most of the time,
Yeah.
which is great, because then that means we can go to do those things. We can go to Colorado without flying. Right now I'm doing summer road trip. I'm running out of new places to go eventually. So I don't know if that's going to carry on forever, and it might be replaced with, just a road trip
Sure.
of sorts. But those other road trips are kind of just more for leisure and fun and stuff like that. But I am fortunate where my best friends and my fiance, they love getting in cars and going places and seeing new
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. I know. Brilliant. So you've got 32 stadiums to go, or at least FBS stadiums. Which ones are you most looking forward to visiting?
So most of the stadiums that I haven't been to are in New England, on the very far East Coast, and
Right.
in Florida. So those are kind of the ones that we're down to. I do have plans to visit Appalachian State and Florida State this year. One for a game, one just kind of for a visit. And I would say those are probably the top two two of the top three currently, because the number one stadium that I have not been to yet is Army's. I'm gonna botch the saying of this. I always thought it was Mishi Stadium. I've heard it Mishi. I've heard a
Right.
bunch of
Yeah.
different ways. But Army's football stadium is scenic. It's super cool because it's on West Point's campus,
Yeah.
and all this kind of great stuff. So that's probably number one that I haven't been to yet. And then Appalachian State's Kid Brewer Stadium. Beautiful, beautiful scenic area. And Florida State's Doak Campbell
Yeah.
Stadium, which is just kind of historic and stuff. And I do have plans to go to their season opener against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So I get to see that one full, which is terrific. But yeah, I would say those are probably the three remaining that I'm most excited for.
Sure. And then of the ones that you've already visited, are there any that you're kind of really desperate to get back and see again, or maybe ones that you've visited the stadium but not actually been there for a game atmosphere?
A lot of them that I've been to that I haven't been to for a
Yeah.
game atmosphere. Just recently, Nebraska,
Yeah.
just because they have that forever home sellout crowd.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably number one in terms of stadiums I want to get back to for a game. One that I have been to a game to before and really do want to get back. And I'm not just saying this, to make you happy, is LSU. LSU Tiger Stadium is unbelievable. And I had such a great time my first one. I really want to get back. I want to see them host like Alabama or Florida or one of their rivals or something like that. But yeah, revisits are definitely in the plans.
Well, we'll get on to LSU a little bit later because I do have a couple of questions about that. But I know it's not an FBS team, but and again, this is just a random university I'm picking out here. But North Dakota State and the Fargo Dome, it always looks amazing. It just I know it's a small and it's a dome, but it just looks like a really fun place to visit. Like, do you have any plans to maybe visit that one day or?
Well, I had plans to visit it on this summer road trip.
Sure.
But then I talked to one of my good friends who works at Nebraska, and we decided to go to a College World Series game instead.
Sure.
So I had the plan to go to North Dakota State. It was on the docket. I was going to go there. But then the College World Series came up. And then I also learned that if you visit all 50 U.S. states and North Dakota is your 50th and final, you can actually like apply online and they'll like send you a t-shirt and put you in this exclusive club of North Dakota as my 50th state type of thing. So I was like, well, we've already come this far. We might as well just wait till then. And I think, Fargo Dome's probably a place I'd want to go to for a game rather than just kind of stepping foot inside. Because there are these stadiums, California Memorial Stadium, Neyland Stadium's one of those, Tennessee, Alabama's Bryant-Denny Stadium, where you walk in and you're just like, wow, at the structure, at the scale, at, how small you are in this place. Fargo Dome probably wouldn't get that same reaction from me, but the game environment is what it's all about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when you were, I looked this up on your website, when you were 75 stadiums in, you traveled just over 11,000 miles. Is that correct? Sort of how many miles are you up to now?
Probably close to 18,000.
Wow.
A lot. And again, all of which of those were in a vehicle.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And the car is still working at this point quite well?
Well, not my second car now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the first car that I started the journey in was my high school and college car. That was my mom's old car. She handed down to me. It was this 2005 Honda Accord, and it was a great car. Really liked it. Good gas mileage. It was comfortable, all that stuff. And it was my first car, so I had an attachment to it. And there's actually a story about this. I was driving back from a game at Mississippi State. It's about 11 hours. I was living in Austin at the time, and there's no like major interstates that take you between Austin and Starkville, Mississippi. There's not a whole lot of major interstates in Mississippi to begin with. So I was on a back highway and it started raining, and it started raining hard to the point where I was probably going 30, 40 miles an hour, on a 60. Everyone was. You had your blinkers on, you had your headlights on, windshield wipers going 100 miles an hour. And I didn't know where I was. And then my windshield wiper stopped working.
Oh, God.
And that's when I'm like, oh boy. I seriously was just white knuckles on the steering wheel, making my peace and just kind of like, oh boy, I really hope I get through this. So I ended up getting through it. Actually, the windshield wipers came back on after a few minutes. And then, when I first moved to Texas, I didn't have, I was serving tables. So I wasn't really making a whole lot of money. I was paying rent, trying to, see what would work here. And eventually I did get an actual job. So I was able to get a new car, which was great. And then my current car has been with me ever since. So that one has seen last year's road trip, this year's road trip, put a lot of miles on that car. But yeah, there's been two different cars. And this one, the AC works, the windshield wipers work. It hasn't let me down yet.
Oh, wow. What have been some stadiums that have surprised you? Kind of maybe both good and bad.
Boy, so many. Texas State's Bobcat Stadium surprised me, not in the game environment could
Sure.
God not get the game environment. They've been so bad for so long, and I don't mean to rag on them. I used to work for them, so the stadium though is just beautiful. It
Yeah.
really, really is. The quality of the stadium itself. And Utah State's another one that's like this. And I put a controversial thing out, and I said Utah State might have the highest quality. I didn't even say the best or the biggest or the nicest. I said the highest quality facilities of any stadium in Utah. And of course, I got BYU fans and Utah fans, even some Utah State fans being like, "What? Are you serious?" I mean, high quality. It really is. Those are two that really come to mind. It's hard to judge though, because a lot of these stadiums are old and, they've been built up since, and they've had renovations since. And so the new ones are going to look a little bit nicer, be a little bit more pristine. So I guess it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, whether or not you really like a stadium, because I really enjoy seeing the history in the stadium. However, I don't want it to look run down and super old and gross. But yeah, ones that definitely surprised me. Texas State surprised me for sure. Troy down in Alabama, that's another one that really surprised me. When I walked in, I was like, whoa, this is super nice. Again, really high quality. Not the biggest, not the best, but like super high quality. And I would say those three are three that definitely surprised me. Neyland Stadium for Tennessee surprised me just how big it was.
Yeah.
When I walked in. DKR Stadium, or DKR Texas Memorial Stadium for Texas, is another one I walked into that was just like the scale of it surprised me. And LSU Tiger Stadium.
Yeah. Nice. Are there any that you visited that are kind of run down, but they have like a certain charm to them in that respect?
Mississippi State fans are going to kill me for this one, but Davis Wade Stadium, Mississippi State, their place isn't awful, but to start, the concourse is made of asphalt and it's kind of haphazard,
right?
And it's cracked, so it doesn't look great when you first get in there. And then to get up to the top, instead of having escalators or back and forth ramp, has a spirally ramp. So it takes, good God, 10, 15 minutes just to get up to the top, just to walk up there in the upper deck. And then when you arrive at the upper deck, they have this kind of press box. I'm putting air quotes around that because it's not really.
Sure.
That's supposed to be an indoor AC place. And that's great for Mississippi. It gets hot, gets sticky there.
Yeah.
Except the problem is it was probably built in the late 70s or early 80s, and it has not been touched since. So there's like multicolored tile that's not in the state colors. Yeah. It's just kind of, So I walked out to my seat, finally sat down. Mind you, this is like game 3 or game 4 of the season. So It's not like end of the season, gotten run down from having fans there. Yeah. There was a half-eaten bird in the row behind me.
A half-eaten bird?
Yeah. And I know they can't control nature, but like you didn't sweep this place out before. So there's a lot of things about Davis Wade Stadium that's just kind of gross. And I know Mississippi State fans are really going to get at my throat for this, because I loved Mississippi State. I had so much fun there, because once you get the fans in, and then I relocated, and you get the fans in there with the cowbells, and they ended up upsetting a top 10 Auburn team that day, which was great. So I really do have fond memories of that stadium, and the outside of the stadium looks great. They have the Bulldog statue, which is awesome too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some features about that stadium that's just not great. Not great. But the overall experience is amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Have you ever got stuck in any of the stadiums that you've visited?
No, but that is my biggest fear ever. I really do take into consideration when I'm at a stadium, not on a game day.
Sure.
I do take into consideration, if I get in, I have to get out. So, if there's a service gate that opens or something, I can't just like follow in a car because it's going to close behind me. My thought is, if it's open and there's people in here, you have to be able to get out. There has to be some sort of fail-safe, but some of these older stadiums are locked. So if the person there decides, all right, time to go, and they leave and lock, I'm going to be trying to climb a fence. and I'm not very good at climbing fences. And that's actually like one of my things on these things is like, look, I will get in if there's an errant gate open. I will get in if they're called dummy locks, where it's not really locked, but it's put over to make it look like that. I will not climb fences. If the police can arrest me on the spot, I don't go in. I don't use that method to get in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have not been stuck, but I don't know. I hope my luck's not running out.